you're going to hear a wild, true story from Robby Starbuck. When I heard this a few weeks back, I was outraged. And I immediately wrote to Robby, said, whatever you need, I will stand with you on this, because I don't care. You know, Robby and I happen to agree on a lot of stuff, and I consider him a friend, but I don't care if he wasn't a friend or we didn't agree. What Meta has done to Robby needs to be corrected, or they will do it to everyone. I'm going to bring Robby Starbuck in so he can tell the story. Hello, Robby. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on and telling the story. Explain what happened, what has happened to you because of Meta and their AI.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar, basically for the last year, my mission, along with my team, has been eliminating DEI policies at major corporations, and we've done that with, I'd say, most of the biggest companies on earth, and with great success. And so at the time in August 2024, we were focused on Harley-Davidson and eventually changed their policies. But there was one particular Harley-Davidson dealership that was not happy about it. And they're from Bernie Sanders' state of Vermont. And so they had posted online a screenshot of Meta AI, and it said that I had been at January 6th and was, part of the, events of that day, and that I had committed a crime. And so I immediately thought...
And charged with a crime.
Yeah, well, we found out about that far later. So we go and we ask Meta AI, because I initially thought they'd maybe faked it or something. That was I'm like, there's no way one of the biggest companies on earth, is inventing a crime that I committed, right? And so we go and check it, and lo and behold, actually, it not only says that I committed a crime, it says that I was charged and arrested, and it later said I pled guilty to a charge of disorderly conduct over January 6th. And the weird part is I wasn't even in D.C. that day. So, this was totally wholesale invented out of nowhere. And we found out something later that actually makes it even more concerning. This does not appear to be a hallucination in the best estimation of myself, my team, and AI experts we've spoken to, because when Meta releases AI models, they release a version you can download and, disconnect from the internet, and it will continue to work because it's like their trained model, right? These are called Llama 3.0, 3.1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. When you do that and you try to recreate the situation, it consistently comes up with the same lies about me. And they range from the January 6th stuff to, in general, saying that I'm essentially a dangerous person. It actually had told advertisers not to advertise with my show, said don't work with him, he's essentially a dangerous individual. And it even insisted that authorities should consider taking my kids from me and put them in the care of somebody.
Hang on just a second. Hold on just a second. I want the audience to understand. For Father's Day, let your dad know he matters. Get him a gift from American Giant. They make clothing here at home with American cotton, American hands, and American heart. It's quality you can feel. Go to american-giant.com/Glenn and get 20% off your first purchase. That's american-giant.com/Glenn. First of all, there's no way this is a hallucination. There's no way. So Meta AI has suggested to authorities that they take Robby's children away from him because he's so dangerous.
Yeah, and you're going to love this part. It not only said that, it said that my kids would probably be better off in the care of somebody who was more accepting of transgenderism and DEI. And, so if you think about this, it makes it feel even more targeted, right? Like the fact that it's going into that narrative tells you that, it's very difficult to think this could be a hallucination because it's very, very specific and consistent with sort of left-wing ideology, right? And so you have to go back to the training and say, how did it get trained to believe this? And go further with that. We are very close to a future where people are going to have robotics in their homes that are trained on AI. Thousands and thousands of apps have already been trained on Meta's AI. And so that's going to last a very long time, right? The other interesting thing about AI defamation is that if you say something that is totally untrue about me, Glenn, and I sue you, and that, goes to court and they say, Glenn defamed Robby, there is an endpoint to that, right? You get justice for it and so on and so forth. With Meta's AI, though, there's sort of this weird thing that happens where we could go to court and the court will say, oh, yeah, they defamed Robby. And at the end of that, you still have all these unplugged models out in the wild that have been downloaded by millions of people. And you will never put the genie back in that bottle because they can't update the versions that are disconnected from the internet, right? So when you think about the future, you could have robots that are walking around in law enforcement thinking that I am a criminal or a wanted individual, because there was a hallucination at one point that claimed that I was wanted for kidnapping charges too.
Oh my gosh.
The whole thing is insane. The whole thing is insane, Glenn. And so we sued them because I think that that is the reasonable thing to do to try to get justice here, not just for myself, but for everybody. Because like you said, this could happen to anybody. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And if you think about just like everything from custody cases to our future elections, this could rig elections.
Let me just throw one more thing in, and then I want to ask you some questions. Meta's AI also claimed that he had appeared on Nick Fuente's show, that he had spoken at Nick's rallies, and that you supported him. He was engaged in Holocaust denial. He's never denied the Holocaust. He doesn't know Nick Fuentes and wouldn't be showing up at any of his rallies. This is hard to believe that this is a hallucination, because I'm working with AI right now and AI designers, and what a hallucination is, it can't memorize the entire internet. Okay, it can't memorize all of human history and information. So it's very good at remembering the beginning and the end, and sometimes it will fill in the middle. But if you ask it, show me the sources on this, it will usually correct itself. You have to say, that's not an actual source, and it will usually correct itself. And it doesn't hallucinate the same thing on the same person all the time. So for this to continue to get deeper and deeper and deeper with you and make things up that are worse and worse shows that there is something in the algorithm. At least this is my feeling, and I got an AI expert upstairs in the break. I'll ask him. But it shows there's something in the algorithm that is tipping the AI to, you're a bad guy, you're a criminal.
That's how it looks to us, and you have to wonder, when there's no rules, what kind of effect can an engineer have if they're an activist and they decide, I hate this group of people, I want to make them look terrible? In my case, it could look like what you have seen, but in an election, a lot of people, especially young people, are increasingly asking, what's the difference between this candidate and that candidate? Try to figure out who they align with. And if AI is allowed to say one is the most flowery version you could write about them, right? Like basically doing PR for them. And then the other side is we can literally invent crimes and say they're wanted for kidnapping or child molestation or whatever. You can shift a couple percentage points in any election on that basis. And that's something that I think everybody should find untenable and unacceptable.
So this is, you want to talk about David versus Goliath. Have you filed suit against them, and what's the status of all of this?
Yeah, we have filed suit in Delaware. That's where, they're incorporated. And, I think every legal expert I've seen out there has said, dang, this is the best defamation case I've ever seen. It's so egregious. And then Meta came out. Okay, so we notified them in August 2024 about what was happening. They didn't do anything about it to actually fix the problem until 9 months later, when I came out with a video where millions of people watched it and became a press story and was all over the media. Then they finally step up and try to do some things, right? And even then, it was, I think about a week or close to a week after that had already come out, and they had put out a statement apologizing, which again is like unheard of in the middle of litigation, for them to put out a statement essentially taking accountability and saying, yo, we did it. You still had it saying things that were just total fabrications, total lies about me. And so it was very clear that Meta was struggling to control what they had built.
This is terrifying, Robby. I mean, I've talked to a few senators about your case, and they're just as incensed about it as I am. And I'm expecting Meta to be called up onto Capitol Hill regarding this. But I don't know. I mean, what the AI has so much power now on Capitol Hill. These gigantic companies, and I'm not sure what anybody is really going to do. I hope justice actually works for you and the system works for you, because if not, this is the beginning of AI tyranny. This is, I mean, if this is allowed to go on, this is the beginning of it, and it will, in 4 years from now, forget about your really your freedom, your reputation, everything will be gone if you happen to oppose what the AI program says is the right way to go.
Yeah, we need serious change, in the system. And I think I'm with you on this. I pray that the system works as it's intended to work. You increasingly, have to wonder as you watch, sort of these rogue judges try to take on the powers of the executive branch, just how many holes there are in the justice system and how much it is working as intended. But I really do pray that it will, because I do think there's downstream effects of this that people are not seeing very clearly. And I've gone down that dystopian rabbit hole, and I've looked at what does it mean in 20 years if this is allowed to happen. And it is
20.
Very, very dangerous.
5. It will be 5 years. It won't be 20 years. Robby, how can I help, and how can the audience help you?
Well, I would say we've just got to consistently keep this story out there, because I think that's really important, that everybody knows what is happening and what is possible, because this extends beyond public figures. This goes into, like, if you have a custody dispute and they're deciding reputation scoring on AI, it could invent all kinds of things about you. You could lose your kids over this. If you are going and trying to get insurance, you could be denied insurance over being perceived as a reputational risk because if you have the wrong politics, right? I mean, this is very dangerous stuff. So talk to your lawmakers, write to them, ask them what they're doing to establish ethical boundaries for AI, because there has to be some boundaries. There is, don't get me wrong, a lot of incredible things AI can be used to do. But if you have no boundaries, it's going to be very, very, very dangerous. And so that would be the first thing. At this point, I'm handling the legal costs and everything, but this could eventually get so expensive legally, depending on the strategy they take, that, maybe at that point we do another round of going through everywhere and saying, hey, can people jump in and help? But, I think we can take this all the way. And I really do believe that it's important that we get serious, sincere changes in the marketplace.
Count on me as a serious ally. I don't think I've ever made this offer to anybody, but I want you to give me regular updates and come on the program. Whenever you have an update, you just call. I'll put you on the air, and you give us an update because we will follow this story, and it's important. I mean, this is the beginning of the end. Anything you might be afraid of with AI, if this isn't corrected, it will happen, and it will happen quickly. So it's got to be corrected. Robby, thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it.
You bet. Bye-bye.